On this episode, some whiteboard fun. It's Simon Sinek's golden circle idea and what it means for water-sensitive urban design. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. And welcome back to another That's Like WSUD episode, where we take an idea or a concept that we've heard about, listened to, read about, in a podcast or a book, and we relate that back to water-sensitive urban design so that we can learn from it and apply it in our day-to-day work and day-to-day lives. Today's That's Like WSUD concept comes from Simon Sinek, and specifically it is his concept of the golden circle. Now I'm sure that a lot of you, or many of you, will have heard about this concept before. And that's cool. It was very revealing, very interesting, and it explained a lot of things for me when I first heard about it, and I'm guessing you might have had a similar experience. Well, today we're going to briefly explain what it is for anyone who hasn't heard about it before, and then we're going to relate this back to water-sensitive urban design, add a few more thoughts to it, and use it as a construct to understand how some policies in local government get support and get backing, and how we can use this to plan the way we talk about things that we want to get up and get done in local government. And presumably for that matter in the private sector, anywhere where you're trying to convince someone to do something really. It's just that my example that I'll talk to you about is local government specific. So let's get into it. What is Simon Sinek's golden circle? Well, fundamentally, he explains it, and there's a really good video that Simon has. So honestly, he does a better job of explaining this than I'm likely to do in the next 1 minute. If you Google Simon Sinek Golden Circle, there's a video that's just under 6 minutes long, should pop up. Have a look at that if you want a really good explanation of this, or stick with me right now for a hopefully decent, but definitely not as good as Simon's explanation. So the golden circle is this that you see here. It's 3 circles, one within the other, and the most inner one is termed why, the next one out is termed how, and the final one on the outside is termed what. And Simon uses this as a model to explain why when some companies advertise to us and talk to us, they're successful and get our attention. And when others do that, they are not. And he says that most companies, when they advertise, start by explaining what it is they do and what they want you to do, how they do it, and then maybe if they're lucky, they get to why. So he uses Apple as an example. So we'd say that if Apple was like everyone else, they would talk to us by going, hey look, we make computers. We do this because we do this by having really good engineers who think really hard about what you need, and we make good products. And if they were like everyone else, they probably wouldn't even touch on why. That's not a very compelling message, right? To say, look, we make computers, we have some engineers who think about it really, really hard, make a good product. Do you want to buy one? It doesn't really work that well. No. Where Simon goes with this is that really persuasive companies approach this the other way round. The way Apple actually approaches this is to go, hey look, we are super passionate at creating the sleekest, most innovative, most stylish products that we possibly can. We do this with great engineers putting lots of thought into it. And in the end, what we make are computers and iPhones and iPads. Do you want to buy one? It's much more compelling because they sold their vision first. By selling why they're doing it, it's much easier then to go, yeah, the logical response to that is to buy a computer. So we can expand this concept then into water-sensitive urban design. And we can think about how individually each of us are motivated. So for me, I'm very, very passionate, my why, to have our healthy, clean waterways so that we can all recreate around them, so that they're environmentally sustainable, so that they support diverse ecosystems that are foundational to us as our human society living upon this planet. And I'm very passionate about water-sensitive urban design as a method to achieve these healthy waterways. So water-sensitive urban design is my what. Healthy waterways, beautiful waterways, clean waterways are my why. Here's the thing though. Imagine that you're a local government. Actually, let's just give a tangible example. Let's not imagine. Let's just give a really tangible example. When I first heard about this golden circle, I heard about it when I worked at Healthy Waterways. And in conversation with a couple of other people there, namely Andrew O'Neill, who at this point in time is the manager of the Water by Design program at Healthy Waterways, and Blair Scott, who now works for King County in America. At the time, we talked about it, and something that came to my mind was that we can expand Simon Sinek's concept here to explain why it is, or to give some insight. Because to say explain why it is, it infers that this answers every element of this. It doesn't. But it gives some insight into why it is that some policies that get, say, proposed in local government get traction and why others don't. And I'll give you an example. So Logan City Council, I worked there from 2010 to 2012. And in like 2011, 2012, the officers in the environment branch at Logan City Council, which I wasn't a part of at the time, but I got to observe this from nearby, had a lot of success in getting waterway health initiatives and waterway connection and livability issues onto the radar of their politicians and like get it really in the focus of things that Logan were focusing on at the time. And what had occurred to me is that if we expand Simon Sinek's model out to suddenly include 2 golden circles, we can codify something that Logan City Council did really, really well. So imagine that you are over on this side, let's get a pen, over on this side, an officer at council, at Logan, who want to get waterway health initiatives, waterway connection and livability issues on the agenda. And over here, we have a politician. As the waterway health officer, you presumably care, you might have very similar why in this to the one I described before. You want to have clean waterways perhaps, you want beautiful waterways that people can interact with, waterways that support business. Like you want fundamentally healthy waterways, and so you come up with a bunch of policies to try and implement that. Maybe you're going to do some water-sensitive urban design. Maybe you're going to do some riparian revegetation. Maybe you want to change the way council plans for and zones its, its development in the future. So it's very clear for you that there's why you're doing things because you care about the waterways in your local government in Logan, and that was my observation of the environment officers at Logan City Council. That's a fairly good representation of that. And they had all these really good ideas for initiatives that they wanted to get implemented into council, which was their what they wanted to do. But what's really interesting here that they identified is that they needed to convince the politicians who didn't necessarily have the same why that they did. The politicians at Logan, for example, might have cared about making sure that everyone has affordable housing, might have cared about making sure there were lots of jobs, might have cared about crime prevention. And that then translated into a whole bunch of whats that they were able to focus on. So what? Crime prevention. What? Affordable housing. What? Plenty of jobs. What? Social inclusion. All these initiatives that they would go out and support. And really cleverly, what I observed the environment officers at Logan City Council do at this time is they went, okay, we care about waterways for a variety of reasons. We therefore have a variety of waterway health policies that we want to implement. But if we want our politicians to add our thing to the radar over here, that was meant to be a dotted out star, it didn't quite work. If we want them to add our waterway health initiatives to their what and to support it, we need to figure out how they satisfy the things that these politicians care about. And so the environment officers at Logan City Council worked out that, well, they can support livability, they can support community inclusion. There are all these things that their waterway health and waterway livability initiatives could do to help the why of the politicians, help the thing that the politicians fundamentally cared about. And I believe that's why Logan City Council, in this period of 2012, suddenly got heaps and heaps of traction at a political level for their waterway health initiatives. And it struck me as really useful, because then we can actually use this framework. I don't think anyone at Logan at the time sat down and thought, oh well, Simon Sinek has a golden circle, let's have a second golden circle and do this. I think somehow they essentially figured this out, or got lucky and just did it. I don't know which it actually was. But the point is, they got it to work. Big thumbs up for that. But we can then use this in a predictive sense. So say you're someone here who wants to implement water-sensitive urban design. You've got an idea for water-sensitive urban design, a policy that you want to implement in the local government that you work in, for example. But note that this could apply equally well in the private sector, but we're going local government today. You presumably know why it is that you care about water-sensitive urban design, and if you don't, have a think about it. That might be quite a revelation to do that. So you know why it is that you care about water-sensitive urban design. You know what policy it is that you need to implement. Well, what I think at this point we should be doing is going, okay, who is it that I need to convince? Who is it that I need to convince if I want my policy to get implemented? And then go, and note, there could be quite a few people here. It's not just going to be one person, right? There could quite possibly be, you know, many people here with their own golden circles, right? That need to be convinced. And what you should be doing is looking, okay, fundamentally, what do each of these people care about? Not what do they do day to day. Not like, oh, well, we need to convince the roads guy and he really likes building roads thing. No. We need to understand fundamentally what drives this person that you need to convince, that you need to get on board with your initiative, and understand, okay, what drives them and how can my what support what they care about so it also becomes their what, and they take it on as something that's foundational to them. No longer what I am trying to convince them to do, but just something that they fundamentally do themselves. And that is what I think we can learn from Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. I've found this a really powerful tool to try and think about, okay, I've got an idea, I want to get it up and get it happening. Who do I need to convince, and how could this benefit them? That's essentially it, going, why do they do what they do, and how can what I'm proposing benefit them? I found it a super useful tool for myself. I don't always use it. In many instances, I forget to use it because we get caught up in day-to-day work. It's hard to, when you're the person who's proposing something, right? It's hard to step back and take the bird's eye view to be able to observe all of this while you're in the midst of it. It's one thing to after the fact, me be able to go, hey, the officers at Logan City Council did something really funky and really cool here. It's one thing to do that in hindsight. It's another to be able to do it in day-to-day practice. But I think it can be really powerful. I think that it can be done in real time as a planning tool. We won't always get it right, but sometimes we will. And I reckon if we do, it'll be really useful. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that you found it useful. And until next time, we'll see you later.